What we're going to do now is work with the French Alps website. So I'm going to duplicate this folder, holding down the Alt key, dragging, dropping, and I'm going to call this French Alps Fluid. Only this time we will work with this folder, French Alps Fluid. As of next time, we will go back to working with French Alps, the fixed design. So let's go ahead and open Index in Firefox or Chrome, whatever browser you're working with. And let's also go ahead and open index.html. Make sure you're working inside of French Alps Fluid. Make sure not to confuse your folders, okay? So I'm going to open the style.css inside of French Alps Fluid and not touch the style.css in French Alps. Okay. And let's make a few changes here. First of all, let me resize the window. This is my website, and if I scale down my window, you will see that nothing scales down with the window, right? Because this is a fixed design, and it's not a fluid design, so it stays fixed no matter what the size of my window is. What I'm going to do now is change the width of this container, which is the main container containing everything, if you remember, from 1000 pixels to 75%. Let me go ahead and do that. 75%, save, and let's refresh the page. Okay, so this is more or less similar to what we had before. 75% of the screen is this much. As you can see, we have issues here. Everything else was not a problem. Obviously, the header scaled 75%, the footer, the text wraps, everything's fine, except for the image and the navigation. So let's go ahead and fix the LI and the image. I'm going to go to CSS and look for li.orange. And currently the width of each LI is 250 pixels, which is a value we got by dividing 1000 over 4, because our container div was 1000 pixels wide. Now, if we want the LIs to stretch from the left to the right side of this size, which happens to be 75% of the screen, what should we say in percentage? We go ahead and say 25%, right? Because we have 4 LIs and we want them to start on the left and end on the right. Okay, so if each is 25%, let's go ahead and save and refresh the page. So that's it. We solved that first problem of the navigation. So everything's beautiful and nice. And if we scale down the window, we have a great fluid website. As you can see, the navigation scales down, the container scales down. The container is the white part, div ID container, which is 75% the size, the width of the screen. And so no matter how wide the screen is, it is always 75% the width of the screen. So it's a beautiful fluid website with the exception of this image. Now this image is a fixed sized image. In Photoshop, I've designed it such that it's 1000 pixels wide. That's because initially we had our container to be 1000 pixels. But if we're working with a fluid design, it should have a percentage value. So let's go ahead and fix that. First, let's look at index and remember where the order of the image is in HTML. It is after the LIs within div ID content. So that tells me that in style.css, I should work under the index section and look for the LI, LIA hover, div ID content. After that is where I will style my image. Now, I can go ahead and do this. So basically give a property to the image element. But it's not a good idea because we have images on the other pages, right? We have images here too. So on the about page. So if I go ahead and say just image, just call the element alone and give it a width of 100%, which is what I'm going to do now, all these other images are going to be affected. So we don't want that. the best thing to do is to go ahead and give our image an ID. So currently it has the source attribute. We can go ahead and give it another attribute. We can give an element as many attributes as necessary, right? So we can give it an ID, a class, anything, just by adding a space, and then ID equals, what shall we call it? Perhaps home img. Okay, something that makes sense to us. And then we go to style, and I'm going to say the image pound home img, which means the image whose ID is this value home img, the way we said the div whose ID is content, right? So this way, whatever properties I give this image will only target the image on the home page that has this ID and not the images on the about page. So what I'm going to do here is just give it a width of 100%. Okay, so 100% means what? 100% the width of its parent. Who is the parent of image? It is div content. Div content has width? No, but it also inherits the width of its own parent, which is div container. And div container is 75% the width of the screen. So the image is going to be 100% the width of div container. So now when I refresh the page, you will see that the image is 100% the width of this white div container. And so now when we scale down the window, it's a beautiful fluid design that scales with the size of the window. Okay, now let's do one more thing. Let's play with the fonts because currently we have these LIs set to, let's look to remember, li.orange A, which means the A element nested in the LI. The font size is 14 pixels. What if we change 14 pixels to 1 EM? Okay, so normally we know that 1 EM is equal to 100% is equal to 16 pixels if that's what's specified in the browser. If the element has a parent that has a different value than 16, then 1 EM is equal to that. Okay, so if there is no parent, then 1 EM is equal to what is specified in the browser's default. But if the parent does have a fixed value, then 1 EM is equal to that. Let's go ahead and refresh the page and see what happens. So I'm going to refresh and let's look at these navigation items. Okay, they're smaller. They're smaller for some reason, which means that 12 pixels is equal to, 1 EM is now equal to 12 pixels. Where did I get that from? Right here. So the body element is the parent element. It's the parent of all the elements. And the font size of the body element, which means everything on the page, is 12 pixels. Okay? So unless we go inside of a specific element and specify otherwise, like we had for the A element here, we had said font size 14 pixels, which means I would like all of the elements, all of the words on the page to have a font size of 12 pixels, except for A, I wanted to have a font size of 14 pixels. So we inserted that 14 pixel value to force the navigation items to be bigger than 12 pixels. But in this case, we're saying font size 1 EM. So 1 EM is a relative value, and 1 EM is relative to what? To the parent. So the parent is the body element, which has a font size of 12 pixels. So visually, our navigation is now smaller, okay? Which is not something we want. We wanted it to look, to be the equivalent of what 14 pixels is visually providing us with. So what we can do is, where are we? 1 EM, perhaps 1.2 EM will be closer to what 14 pixels was showing. Okay, there you go. So 1.2 EM. Also, if we look at the other pages, obviously we have nothing yet on Come With Me and what we'll do, but we have the About the Trip page, which also became fluid. The whole website became fluid. And if we scale down the window, we have this very nice fluid design where the text wraps around the image, and it's a great fluid design.